It all began in the small town of Henryville, Indiana. Harland David Sanders was born on September 9, 1890, into a family that knew more of hardship than comfort. His early life was defined by loss. At the tender age of 5, his father passed away, leaving his mother to provide for the family. And so, in the heart of America's rural landscape, young Harland found himself in the kitchen, cooking meals for his younger siblings while his mother worked long hours. This was where his journey with food began, though no one, least of all Sanders, could have imagined how far it would take him. But before he became a household name, he lived through a turbulent, fractured youth. As a teenager, life didn't come easy. School was a constant struggle. At just 13, Sanders dropped out, disillusioned with traditional education, and began working odd jobs to survive. Farmhand, streetcar conductor, railroad fireman, each job was a stepping stone in a journey marked by one failure after another. His home life was no refuge either. After his mother remarried, Sanders found himself in a household filled with conflict and strife. His youth was not the story of overnight success. It was a story of scraping by, of setbacks that threatened to define his existence. But Harland Sanders was a man not easily broken. He wandered from job to job, living a life as varied as it was unstable. He served as a soldier in Cuba, sold insurance door to door, and even tried his hand at law. But fate seemed determined to test him. His legal career ended in spectacular fashion after a courtroom brawl. And so, the cycle of losses continued. Jobs came and went, and eventually, so did his marriage. By his mid-30s, Sanders had lost his job, his wife, and his family home. It was a dark chapter, one that might have crushed a lesser man. But Sanders, hardened by a lifetime of failures, refused to surrender. At the age of 40, he found a glimmer of hope in the unlikeliest of places, a gas station in Corbin, Kentucky. Running a gas station might seem a world away from the culinary empire he would one day create, but for Sanders, it was an opportunity to do what he did best: cook. At first, he served meals to passing motorists in a small dining area attached to the gas station. But it wasn't just any meal that caught people's attention. It was his fried chicken. Cooked quickly using a pressure cooker, his chicken was golden, crispy, and flavorful in a way that was hard to forget. Over time, his fried chicken recipe, seasoned with a blend of 11 herbs and spices, became the stuff of local legend. The gas station evolved into a full-fledged restaurant with 142 seats. Business was booming. But fate, as it so often did in Sanders' life, had other plans. A fire gutted his restaurant, and as if that weren't enough, World War II broke out, devastating his business. By the end of it all, Sanders was forced to sell his restaurant. At the age of 65, he was living on a meager Social Security check. Most would have seen this as the end of the road, but not Sanders. Instead, he saw it as the beginning of something new. With nothing more than his recipe and his car, Sanders embarked on a journey across the United States to franchise his chicken recipe to local restaurants. He faced 1,009 rejections before he heard his first yes. But that first yes in 1952 would change everything. It was from a restaurant owner in Salt Lake City, Utah, who agreed to franchise Sanders' chicken under the name we now all know, Kentucky Fried Chicken. What followed was nothing short of meteoric. The franchise exploded. By 1963, there were over 600 KFC outlets across the U.S. and Canada. Harland Sanders, with his white suit, string tie, and signature goatee, became the face of the brand, Colonel Sanders. But success brought its own challenges. By 1964, with his company growing beyond his control, Sanders made a decision that would alter the course of his legacy. He sold KFC to a group of investors for $2 million, a fortune at the time. He stayed on as the brand's ambassador, but the company was no longer in his hands. Colonel Sanders, now a multimillionaire, should have been content. But as the company he built began to change under new management, Sanders became increasingly vocal about what he saw as the degradation of his beloved recipe. In 1971, KFC was sold again, this time to a food conglomerate, and with that came further modifications. Sanders, who had once poured his soul into perfecting his fried chicken, now watched helplessly as his original recipe was altered, cost-cutting measures were put in place, and the quality of the food diminished, at least in his eyes. In interviews, he was scathing, calling the new recipes the worst fried chicken I've ever seen. Despite his growing discontent, Sanders remained the public face of KFC. His likeness, whether in person or as a logo, was inextricably tied to the brand, even as it became something he no longer recognized. Despite his frustrations and the many hardships that marked his life, Colonel Sanders left an indelible mark on the world. He passed away in 1980, but the empire he built continues to thrive. Today, KFC operates over 24,000 restaurants in more than 145 countries. His face still graces buckets of chicken around the world, a symbol of perseverance, of resilience, and of a dream realized later in life than most would have dared to hope. Colonel Harland Sanders' story is not just about fried chicken. It's about the pursuit of a vision, the willingness to take risks, and the strength to keep going long after the world would have told him to stop. In the end, Sanders' life serves as a reminder that success often comes not to those who have everything handed to them, but to those who can endure the long and winding road of failure. This was the story of Colonel Harland Sanders, a man whose life, like his chicken, was made with the right mix of ingredients: hardship, determination, and an unyielding will to succeed.